Hello and welcome to the latest in Real Stories, our bite-sized format of Do More with Less. We twin our monthly Do More with Less interviews with marketing leaders telling shorter, punchier stories that highlight their on-the-ground experience as individuals fighting to work out how to do more with less. Today I'm talking to Elena Pinakatt, Managing Partner and CMO of Monoceros Marketing. But Elena is a rare gem for us because she is a marketing leader of note, but not necessarily with the B2B legacy that our guests normally boast. Elena comes to us fresh from 21 years at Coca-Cola in Atlanta, latterly as Global Vice President, Marketing and Transformation, with analytics and insights in there as well, and a whole host, I see, of senior marketing roles throughout the portfolio. So, Elena, welcome. Thank you. So your first and last job was with the biggest brand in the world, right at the hub in Atlanta, where Coca-Cola lives and breathes, where it was invented. And you have been part of a company that speaks to 200 nations, 200 markets, billions of people all over the world, with some of the most, across that portfolio, I can't remember how many billion-dollar products you have, but marketing from the highest end. And 11 months ago, you started Monoceros Marketing, which is a practice putting the very, very best of fractional CMO, fractional marketing into scale-ups and startups. Tell me about that decision.
Well, thank you for asking. It's been obviously a big decision. So I decided to be forever 21 at Coke, basically. So I had a great journey at Coke. When I think about it, what drove my decision? Let me tell you a quick story, okay? I always wanted to be a detective when I was a kid because I'm really, as I say, curious. I'm super nosy, and I always like the why behind things. And so I didn't end up to become a detective, obviously, but I think marketing is a little bit of detective work, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to uncover really what makes people tick, what people want, and how you can make their lives a bit better, easier, get them to buy what we want to sell. And so I ended up in marketing and moved around with Coke a lot, not just in Atlanta. I'm German, as you can hear from my ever-increasing accent, but also US, Singapore. I lived in the UK. I lived in Cambodia, actually, and had, honestly, many great roles in marketing, but also didn't shy away from stuff that was not marketing, but marketing analytics or big marketing analytics transformation, which was fascinating. And then after this, I thought, so what's next? I've been here for 20 years. I feel like I've learned what I've wanted to learn. I've had a great ride, but I was always curious about other parts that I hadn't been exposed to so much. So the startup world. You hear a lot about it. It's very glamorous from the Coke side. Oh, but how is it really? Is it that glamorous? No, it's actually not. It's not that glamorous, but it's something I didn't know. Or how do other companies operate? What knowledge can you apply? What other transferable skills? How you can help other companies? And that was my decision to take the leap and jump into this. And it's been a really great experience.
I love that you used to want to be a detective. I love that.
I kind of do.
Yeah, I get it. In fact, I can tell you right now that I started my plans for my career aged 6 years old. I didn't want to be Superman. I wanted to be Clark Kent. I wanted to be in the newsroom. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a reporter. And that was the world. That was my first instinct and kind of exposure, if you like, to the world of journalism, which got me into marketing as well. I was a journalist for 10, 12 years at the national newspapers. I was editor of Marketing Week magazine, and a lot of it was the very, very same urges and instincts that you've had all your life: nosiness, curious, curiosity, wanting to talk to people. And as you can imagine, just the very fact that we're sitting here talking together, I get to interview and listen and hear those stories still, which kind of satisfies me. But yes, you're right. Marketing is a natural game to be to appeal to people who wanted to be detectives and journalists. I was in Atlanta as part of my editorship of Marketing Week. Actually, I went to spend 3 or 4 days with Muhtar Kent as CEO and chairman, as he then was, and his leadership team when Coke turned 125 in 2011.
Yeah,
and did the whole thing. I loved it. I got exposed to the Coca-Cola Museum and all those great stories, and I got to sit with all those leaders. And I can imagine how that kind of whirlwind and rotation of jobs came to you. But the thing that they all had in common was that they were all thinking from a consumer marketing point of view. And I imagine there was huge resource and budget behind every plan that you wanted to have. Maybe. You tell me. Did you have to do more with less at Coca-Cola?
So no one will believe me when I say this, but yes. So because the only I would say big budget is on Coca-Cola. And that doesn't mean that Coke obviously invests a huge amount of money in marketing. It's a big priority, but I always ended up on the more challenging brands or portfolios that were a bit in trouble, that might not have been as sexy from the get-go. But for some reason, I always ended up there. And I think it was a little bit deliberate, or not deliberate, but there was this underlying need for me to make an impact and turn things around. Whether that was Diet Coke that was tanking, or Coke Zero that was super small, or the juice portfolio wasn't doing well, etc. So on all of these brands, Coke Zero has changed now, but initially, Diet Coke globally, juice is not the highest priority, even though it's super huge and profitable. But so I ended up on having to do more with less, and having more, especially having more internal convincing to do. And how do we get the maximum of the small budget that we have out with the biggest impact?
I actually read something that you wrote recently where you talked about scarcity breeds creativity, and that magic happens when you can when you have those restraints upon you, and you know what to prioritize. That can actually breed better thinking.
Yeah, and let me maybe give you an example from my last analytics job, because we were asked to transform marketing analytics, and everybody has to do self-service and democratization of data. And obviously that's a huge efficiency game, but you can build dashboard over dashboard and still nobody wants to use it, because marketers might not really be that interested in using dashboards in the first place, right? So we had to really think about, we don't have a lot of money, we have one shot at this. How can we what is actually the underlying problem why people today don't use the stuff that is already out there? There's an abundance of data at Coca-Cola, right? So why are they not using this? Well, they're afraid of it. They don't feel comfortable getting the numbers themselves and then sharing them, etc., etc. So we had to dig deep in the psyche of the marketer at the company, and then subsequently created business solutions for the organization that people actually like to use. And that is, I think, the more with less beauty. You have to think much harder. What is the problem to solve? I'm a big fan of what's the real job to be done, and really digging deep. What is the insight we want to uncover? Because then you might not need a lot of budget. Sometimes a lot of budget covers up also mediocre ideas, right? So it makes you think much harder and sharper before you invest.
I do think that there's some of the things that you've said, jobs to be done, and the kind of finding the right insights and giving a sense of understanding what you already have rather than creating something new. Those are all great lessons for anyone tuning in to any of our pod episodes on Do More with Less. Those are often repeated themes. It's just really interesting to hear it coming from that company. So thank you for the...
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, I appreciate that at Coca-Cola, there's this hero product. And then right now we see Diet Coke and Coke Zero as sort of sister brands of that hero product with as much resource. But I'm in it. Yeah, I remember when Coke Zero wasn't big, and when it first launched, and it was quite a confusing proposition, both internally and externally. And I remember all the different health trends that drove Coke to invest in waters and juices. But yeah, I can imagine that most of the budget and the focus goes onto the Cinderella product.
Yeah.
Tell me this. You talked about the supposed glamour of startups and scale-ups. 11 months in, how do you feel? Because that's not a word I would associate with trying to influence a business that has to be agile, fast, flexible, and sometimes gritty just in order to survive for the next day. How is it? Are you still glamorous?
Well, I wouldn't choose glamour, but I would choose. I think the glamour perception probably comes a little bit from if you are in the corporate world for such a long time, you have a lot of resources, presumably, but a lot of constraints with regards to a lot of stakeholders that need to align, a lot of politics that need to be massaged, etc. So. And the glamour aspect on the other side was always, oh wow, they can just do things. That was the glamour. So they can just do things, and they don't have to have these approval rounds, and they don't have to convince 200 markets. Honestly, it's of course it's that it's super hard work. It's super hard work. It can be super intense. What I love about it is the speed. And that really everybody is behind a common goal. There are obviously no politics. There are no people and no time for politics. So everyone is just really lined up. That's what we're going to do. And we're running in the same direction. And really working together behind a common goal. And I would say, especially because here in Atlanta, there's a huge startup scene, actually. And it's really inspiring to work with fellow founders, see what they do. The community is super tight-knit. They're very supportive of each other. That has really, really been a really great experience.
You know what? I think that you can add so much to the startup scene, because I also, when I first went from corporate to startup, I was absolutely blown away by the speed at which things could happen. And sometimes the young marketing teams might be able to come up with an idea, put a landing page together, put some social posts out and a video on YouTube and link it all together and get it out by lunchtime, what might have taken 6 months of decision making in the past. I do think, however, that you, and I would love to hear your reflections on this. I think that there's also an element to that speed in startup world where the last person that spoke to the CEO in the stairwell outside the meeting gets the decision made. And I think there's a level of structure needed to add to the chaos to make a startup a little bit more grown up, because otherwise what you can find is that you can do a lot of work that never sees the light of day, because if strategy and direction and decisions can change daily, which they do, you can find yourself going down 3 wrong paths to get to the right one. And so it would be really, I've often gone into startups either as an external consultant or as in-house, and found actually as well as celebrating the speed and the agility, there's a need sometimes for putting some frameworks and structure in place and slowing everybody down at times just to get the right decision made and agreed. And, that can frustrate people.
It's really funny that you say this, because now it will. It's really funny that you say this, because that is so true. Especially when startups are in a super fast growth and are changing, more markets, super growth, and then the operating backbone doesn't keep up with this ambition. And that I recently had this with a client I'm helping with, where the ask was, how can we speed up innovation, speed up this process? But when I talked to the team, I realized, well, they're already super fast. The problem is they're not running in the same direction. They're running in all directions because there is no structure at all. They're basically still operated on a huge business in a very startup mode. And one way to describe this probably, it's like you're running a marathon with 100-meter sprints. You have my spikes here in the background, so I'm an old track and field. so it's really and that breeds exhaustion. Yeah, so that is not sustainable, and that's not. But I also know that's not what do more with less is about. But you have to have that structure. That sounds a little bit boring, but you have to have it in place for people to actually be able to run faster, especially as companies are growing.
I absolutely agree, and I wonder also, you don't just have Coca-Cola on your CV. If you look through the places that you've developed and trained and learned the trade, I see that on your CV are education establishments like MIT, Harvard, and Yale. I'm talking all three, and so and I'm looking at skills learned there like cross-functional team leadership, so team development, executive visibility, ethics, and AI. This is all stuff that certain startup mentality founders would see as slowing everything down and too corporate and too big. Has it been a problem to figure out how to get yourself heard and listened to, or has it been quite a smooth ride in instilling your clients and your partners with really good sound marketing practice?
I think there's a bit of a difference between early startups and where it's really and it's more scale-ups. That scale-ups, and they know things are not working. You have, if the structure is not there and they're really running in all directions, they know something is no longer working. They might not exactly know what is not working because process is not the sexiest thing to talk about or to implement. But they know something is broken and they need to adjust. So that has been, I would say, pretty straightforward. Yeah? So and with early startups, it's more about building the foundation. I found oftentimes you have a founder, the one I'm working with, absolutely brilliant idea, technically superb. But they're often also very much obviously in the weeds of the product they create. And sometimes you have to pop out of the weeds and have to really think through, okay, what does the end user, why would they want to buy this thing? Going back to the B2B versus B2C word, it's the same thing. What does the other side, what do they want? Why would they want to buy this? And it's never just about a technical solution. It's also humans have emotions. They resonate better with emotional storytelling than just giving the technical features. And that has been something that is not always easy to explain. But once you see it, or once they see it, they feel it. Oh, okay, this makes a big difference. So, but trying to educate people on the power of emotions in this world, I think that's just, it feels a bit far it but once you say, okay, well, right now this is very technical. Look, if we word it that way, if we position the brand that way, it can be much more powerful. It resonates more with people, and that clicks. And especially when they then get feedback from their surroundings, oh, this is really powerful. I've never seen a brand that does this. So it's a little bit different.
B2B is still very much on the journey there. I mean, we talk the right talk, and we have all the studies from Les Binet and Peter Field and the B2B Institute, and on the power of emotion and the power of brand building in B2B. But it's 100% of the talk. I reckon it's 30 or 40% of the practice and adoption. And I think that the education on emotional messaging and brand building is still something that we find ourselves educating on every single day. I don't think it goes away. And I think even, by the way, sometimes it's easier. Sometimes you can actually have hard evidence and proof and they still find it difficult to just make that leap. On that subject, would you say that B2B and B2C are more alike but with some differences, or more difference with some similarities?
I would definitely say they're more alike. And that is simply because at the end of the day, decisions are made by people. So people have emotions. They're not tools. They're not a technology, and therefore B2B might have longer cycles, etc. To more technical products that you need to be familiar with and need to be able to talk about. All the things. So of course there are differences, but if you boil it down to really where does it start and how do people click with something? It's about people make those decisions and they need to be convinced, and they're not just convinced by logic or functionality. There's always, even if they don't know or they're not aware or they don't like it, there is an element of emotion to it, and that helps with selling the product. So I think there is a lot of similarity.
I love that. Elena, thank you so much for your time. What you've heard from Elena is around the power of emotion in B2B selling, the differences and similarities between B2B and B2C, but also the buyability, the kind of appeal of working with somebody who's been at a B2C company to help generate and train more effectiveness out of B2B as a whole. And I think your clients are going to absolutely love benefiting from your experience and your expertise. So thank you for the time you've given us. This has been Do More with Less, Real Stories, another episode sponsored by Orbital X, your end-to-end marketing resource group. So thank you so much, Ellen. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Okay.